One of the biggest questions that people ask me is, what does it mean when I'm trying to manifest and everything seems to be going wrong? Nothing is going right. Nothing's working out for me. And this is a very powerful and important part of the manifestation process. So even when I say effortless manifestation, easy manifestation, or I say, everything comes to me just as I want it to, we have to understand that there's always going to be contrasting periods and moments in the manifestation process. It is actually by law. And this is several laws here that are actually in play during your manifestation process. So the first one is the law of rhythm. So the law of rhythm says that life is according to a rhythm. There is ups and there is going to be downs. So if you expect that your life is just this trajectory like this all the way, and you don't allow yourself to ride those waves, and you fight those waves, you're going to be in a resistive state. And so you will not find effortless and easy manifestation. You will be finding a hard and rocky journey towards what you want. And that very resistance to the flow of life, riding those waves of life, actually will have you inadvertently selecting what you don't want. So the important thing is to understand that there is waves of life, and you will always experience the highs and the lows, the mountain peaks and the troughs, and you will always experience that variety of life. So going into that then, if I'm manifesting and I say, okay, I'm going to ride the waves of life, I'm going to manifest, and I'm going to be okay with all the turbulence that life has to offer. I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to be more resilient. And my manifestation journey is going to be in that flow state. I'm going to be non-reactive. I'm going to remain more neutral. But there is this other thing that happens before your manifestation presents itself. And Neale Donald Walsch put it so eloquently in Happier Than God, chapter 12, When Life Becomes Contrary. It is one of my favorite chapters in any book that I've probably ever read, because it gives you a sense of peace and a sense of understanding of what is actually occurring to you and for you, in that moment. And so what Neale describes this as is the law of opposites. So let's say you're manifesting an experience in your life of more love or more peace or more financial abundance. And then you find yourself with the lowest bank account that you've ever seen. Your love life feels like it's falling apart, or you're in conflict with people around you when you desire peace. And it's like, well, what is happening here? Like, how can this actually, it doesn't look like what I want is showing up. It actually looks like the opposite is showing up. And that's why he uses the word contrast, or it's in contrary to what you think you want. But what Neale says, and what I truly believe is true, is that this is simply an open door. And it is simply letting you know that what you want is on its way, and first the opposite will appear. So when we call in and we demand for a higher level version of ourselves, when we call in and we demand more in this life, and we're asking for higher levels of all these things, we have to unravel, we have to get rid of, we have to lose and let go of the things that tie us to the old. So a beautiful analogy that I use, anybody in any of my programs will have heard this before, but the analogy of cleaning out the pantry. So if you go in and you look at your pantry one day and you're like, this is a mess, I want a cleaner pantry. And you start pulling everything out and you put it all over the counter and you clean out the bins and you walk in, you're like, wow, this is a mess. But you have to create the messy pantry before you put it all back together, that neat, tidy, beautiful pantry. So if you are experiencing the contrary right now, or the contrast to what you think you want, it is evidence that it's all going to come back together just as you've asked for it. And the law of opposites, or the law of polarity, says that there is always a good side to everything and there is always a bad side. There is always a light, there's always a dark, there's always a happy, there's always going to be a sad. So when we call in a elevated version of our higher experience, or a human experience, we are also going to experience higher level versions of the opposite emotions. And that's okay. And so I always tell myself in those moments, maybe I'm experiencing sadness like I haven't before because there's a level of happiness on its way to me coming up next that I haven't quite realized yet. And that full range of the human experience is a part of manifestation. It's just now I understand my software better, and I understand my emotions better, and I understand that those are states of being that I can choose to no longer experience or exhibit, and I can choose that elevated opposite just as easily as that. So the key for me in the moments of contrast, or the moments where the opposites are showing up, how can I remain true to the identity of who I desire to be, who I really am, and the state of being that I know is on its way? So the pantry example, as the kitchen is a mess, the pantry's all disheveled and it's all over the place, I hold the image of the clear, clean, organized, put together pantry, and it allows me to stay and hold that image of what's on its way instead of just what's here right in front of me. The other thing with the law of opposites and the law of polarity and the contrast and experiencing the contrast is that it's all up for interpretation. Everything is up for interpretation. So what that means is anything you observe in the 3D physical world is simply an event. It is simply a circumstance. It has no value and it has no meaning until you give it the value and you give it the meaning. So what Neil is actually asking us to do in that chapter is to choose to see an open door when the average person sees an obstacle. So instead of seeing this as a really, really hard moment, you see it as a self-defining moment. Instead of seeing it as a roadblock that's keeping you from what you want, you see it as something you're overcoming to step into the next grandest version of who you are and who you could be. One example of the law of opposites that I've experienced personally, and I actually share this quite often, was my journey related to the embodiment of the next level version of health for me. So January of 2022, I made a decision to step into a healthy version of me. For the first time in my life, it wasn't about weight loss. It wasn't about thinness. It wasn't about vanity, what I looked like. I truly had fallen in love with Kathleen Cameron at 320 pounds. I truly believed that she was beautiful. The vessel that I was in at that time, same vessel, just feels very different now. But that version of me, who I was then, I loved her so much. And I actually dropped all these limiting beliefs around my body and what that meant for me and for success and for, validation in life and all that kind of stuff. What people thought of me and my body, and was I unhealthy? Was I not unhealthy? Did I look good? Did I not look good? I let go of all that and I just decided to love myself. So for 2 years, from 2020 to 2022, I fell in love with me and I fell in love with my body, and I did mirror work. And I dropped the desire to lose weight. January of 2022 came around. The next level version of me asked, okay, so if you love yourself truly and you love what you do, you're living in your calling and your purpose, how can you make sure that you're treating the vessel that you're in? Because I'm not this body, I'm in it, but I'm not it. So how can you treat this vessel that you're in a healthy way? And I just started to ask myself that question. And I dropped the feelings that I was unhealthy. For years, everybody told me that because I was in a larger frame body and I was in a bigger body, that meant that I was lazy, that I was unhealthy, that maybe I was sloppy or greedy or gluttonous. I'd heard names like you're a pig, things like that. People make assumptions about the way in which you eat, what you eat, how much you eat. And so I knew before 2020, this feeling that I'm an unhealthy person. And I let go of that in 2020. But what I realized is some of that still stayed. And then I started to take a peek at my actual behaviors related to health and how many activities that I do in a daily basis come from the identity of believing I'm healthy versus believing I'm unhealthy. And I realized when I said to myself, I want to be health in 2022. My word of the year for 2022 was health. I want to be health. And when I made that decision in 2022 to choose health, I realized that I didn't believe I was health. If I believed that I embodied health and that all of my behaviors, all of my thoughts, all of my feelings all match that idea of health, then I would believe I was health in that moment, and I didn't. There was still those past patterns, programs, and beliefs. So I led with health in 2022 and decided I am, for the first time in my life, going to exercise without wanting to be thin, eat nutritious and healthy food without wanting to be thin, that I'm going to eat healthy food, drink a lot of water, sleep right, meditate every day, visualize every day, not because I'm going to gain something, but because that's who I am and the identity of who I want to be. So I ended up deciding that year was going to be my year of health. And so January of 2022, I cut coffee. I stopped drinking alcohol February of 2022. I started drinking matcha every day, and people make fun of me. They say I have a matcha cult now. So many people in my life are obsessed with matcha now. But I convinced myself that it was healthy for me. So now I love it, and it makes me feel good every day. Then I started to look at, the types of foods that I was eating and all those kinds of things. And how often do I move my body? And is there an opportunity for me to move it more? So I started walking every day in January of 2022. So things appeared like the idea of health was going to come together for me, that I was going to effortlessly manifest this new identity and state of being. However, the world threw something at me. The world threw it. I manifested something for myself in April of 2022. I ended up getting pneumonia the tail end of April. I was traveling a lot, and I got pneumonia in my right lung lobe, and I had a retreat to go to in the Bahamas, and I ended up in hospital. They let me out of hospital. I had fluid outside of the lung now. They let me out to go to my retreat, and in a really beautiful, dramatic fashion, I had to get a private jet. My mom chartered a private jet to get me out of Bahamas and to Mount Sinai Hospital, where 24 hours later, I had lung surgery to release my right lung that was completely trapped beneath infection. And I think it was like the size of a toonie. Yes, I'm Canadian. In Canada, we have toonies, which would be like about this big. But I could not breathe. I was in excruciating pain, and even my kidneys were starting to shut down. And I ended up in the ICU. I had a chest tube. So for all intents and purposes, you would say that this idea of health was not really presenting itself very well. I was actually feeling pretty unhealthy in the hospital and leading up to it, right? But what has ensued since then has been so powerful. My mom wrote on the board, miraculous recovery, and she drew a little butterfly on there because the butterfly is my spirit sign. And what happened after that was a miraculous recovery. I've come out of the surgery stronger than ever before. I work out 6 days a week with my trainer. I eat nutritious and healthy food. I have completely reprogrammed my subconscious mind to love salad, and I hated it for how many years? I know we have another podcast episode on that topic, but I truly love to walk and be active, and I'm out hiking, and it's been 2 years now since I've had any alcohol, and I really focus every single day on dropping the desire to lose weight and be thin, but instead to step into an identity of longevity and health for my vessel. And why I share this story is because it is a perfect example of the law of opposites. And when life becomes in contrary, it appears to be in contrary, everything is going wrong. It felt like everything was falling apart. It actually came back together for me to be this version of myself that I'm even more proud of today. And now I'm so excited. On June 15th, I'm going to be running a 10K. And it's going to be like 2 years plus a week to my surgery. So from literally in the ICU, couldn't even breathe with a chest tube, to running a 10K. And I'm going to do it in an hour and 15 minutes. It's already done. So I'm super, super blessed and grateful. And I actually look back on that experience. It was painful. It was emotional. It was hard in so many ways, but I have stepped out of it just this version of me that I'm super, super proud of. So when things appear like they're falling apart, or like things are going wrong, or the contrast or the circumstance, I think it's important to look at it as a beautiful sign that everything you do want is actually right there. So when you step into desiring more money in your life, yeah, you might get a bill that in that moment is like, ooh, I gotta pay this. But have the faith that you pay that bill and a windfall twice as much comes right after. And maybe it's you end a relationship in your life that you thought was something really special, but maybe isn't anymore. But what that means is when you let that one go, that you're calling in the next best one for you, an experience of love and passion that maybe you have never experienced before, and hang on to that. And then the other one is peace. And so if you have a life that has a lot of conflict in it, and you're asking for more peace, you might have one last conflict with somebody that resolves the relationship forever, that leaves you at peace. So I think this is an important message in the manifestation world. It's important to feel in order to heal. The full human experience is valuable, including when the times feel like they're going wrong. So I hope that that message serves you. I hope it helps. And if you're experiencing the contrast today, this is your message from the universe, that this is an open door. And remember that the limit does not exist.